Check. Well, hello, everybody. Hello. Oh, come on, people. You can do better than that. Hey. Welcome to Jazz as a Societal Voice, right, Chris? This is session 2 of 3, Keepers of the Flame. My name is Greg Carroll. I'm the board chair with Kansas City Jazz Alive, and I want to welcome you all. And I would also like to just have you just give a nice welcome for all of our board members. BJ Jansen's here, Chris Burnett is here, Emily Behrmann is here, who you'll meet in a minute. And our newest board member, as of about an hour and a half ago, Daryl McCaig is here. Say hello. It's a great board. I mentioned in our meeting today how wonderful it is to be on a board that is engaged, because I think engagement matters. And this organization does an awful lot in terms of trying to raise the tide that lifts all jazz boats. And with that, that was the Dr. Pepper. With that, we are gearing up for our 10th anniversary. Is that right, BJ? 10th anniversary of Spotlight Charlie Parker. Although we should have been celebrating Bird a lot longer than 10 years, right? Kansas City, but hey, got to start sometime, right, Lonnie? So this is the 10th anniversary of this particular festivities. We are so excited about what's going to happen. Our student music boot camp will kick things off on the 19th. We have some wonderful showcase of jazz artists, a whole bunch of them that are on our website. We have a panel session on Tuesday at Music Theater Heritage, which will be a focus this year on women in jazz. So Charlie Parker's influences on women in jazz. And we'll have on that panel the great Deborah Brown. Cheryl, remind me of her last name, Emily. The filmmaker, novelist, writer. Well, I can't remember her name, but she's a novelist, a real astute lady. Cheryl somebody or another. And Lisa Hiddle will be moderating it. And a real special guest on that panel will be the great Carol Brewer, thank you. And then Tia Fuller will be sitting in on that panel. So come and check it out. There are limited seats. It's at Music Theater Heritage. So as soon as those tickets go up, get them and keep checking the Jazz Alive website or Spotlight Charlie Parker site for information. We also have our history tour led by Chuck Haddix and Jerry Sanders. Jerry Sanders, thank you. Boy, why am I just drawing a blank here? Been seeing these names thousands of times, so that's going to be a great opportunity as well. And then this year's culminating activity is going to be a fantastic tribute to Charlie Parker with the Grammy nominated artist Tia Fuller with a group of Kansas City Jazz All-Stars and strings. We are actually doing a special reimagining of the great Bird recording, Bird with Strings. So we've hired a really fantastic arranger that has put together 4 beautiful arrangements of Loverman, If I Should Lose You, Confirmation, and My Little Suede Shoes. And so we have 7 string students from Youth Symphony of Kansas City, conductor. It's going to be fantastic, you guys. You have to come and see that particular show. That's on Saturday, the 26th of August, and those tickets are getting ready to go up as well. So that's Spotlight Charlie Parker. But way before Spotlight Charlie Parker, tomorrow, you can come to Music Theater Heritage and support the great program led by our friend Chris and Terry Burnett called Kansas City Area Youth Jazz. This particular program will feature student enrichment jazz programs from around the city, including our 2 bands from Kansas City Area Youth Jazz, the Bobby Watson Ensemble, the Crane Ensemble. It'll feature the 5-star big band or jazz combo from the Northland, and it'll also feature the live KC Jazz big band. And that's tomorrow night at 7 o'clock MTH. And it will be emceed by yours truly, Michael Gherkin and Debbie Gherkin, Deborah Gherkin. So come and check that out. The Tia Fuller concert will be emceed by the great Daisha Jones from channel KSHB. So a lot of stuff is going on, but this panel is so important to us because it reminds us how important the notion of mentorship is and tutelage and the process of anointing, if you will, how important that is in the music. And so it gives me a great deal of pleasure to bring up to the stage your moderator, Mr. Steve Kraske. Thank you all for being here. Yeah. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for hello, hello. Are there? No, there's a flip on the mic. I just pushed it. I did. It's that. Yeah, there we go. I'll speak loudly. Good to see everybody. How are you? Great. Yeah, great. And Greg, thanks for the great introduction. You did a great job laying out what we're going to do here today. We're going to continue sort of expand our focus from the last conversation we had a couple of months ago to talk more about mentorship, not just when it comes to life on the bandstand, but really life in general outside too, the business of jazz, how we learn, how we bring the next generation along. We're going to try and gauge how we are, how well we're doing with the next generation and what that means going forward. And it's so important for what KC Jazz Alive can do to sort of encourage and give life and breathe into this process as we all assess this mentorship idea going forward. So let me introduce, I think you know everybody here, Lonnie McFadden. Lonnie, waved everybody. Jackie Meyers, composer, singer. Jackie, good to have you here. Player, jazz pianist. Emily Behrmann from the KC Jazz Alive board and recently retired almost exactly 1 year ago, right? As executive director of the performing arts out at JUCO. So good to have all you guys here. Well, Lonnie, let me just start with you. We have David Bassi here as well. We had hoped to have him on the panel with us today in person. He's convalescing at home from the vid. So David is joining us on Facebook. And if he chimes in, Macy's going to bring us that and we'll get David's input as we go along here. Well, let's talk a little bit about mentorship. And Lonnie, I'll begin with you. What types of early mentorship did you have in your career? How much of a difference did that make for you going forward?
Oh, it's my whole story.
Grab that microphone, Lonnie.
It's my whole story, actually. I was influenced at an early age by my father and a lot of his friends that were around here. And when I'm talking about his friends, people like Jay McShann, Big Joe Turner, and then of course Eddie Saunders, Eddie Baker, Aladdin, Milton.
Everybody.
Betty Milton used to be by the house quite a bit. So I always wanted to be like them. So I was being mentored without realizing. I mean, you know, when you 4 and 5 years old, you have no idea that you're gonna spend your life in nightclubs like I've done. But I always wanted to be like them. So yeah, from all my life.
And what kind of difference did that make early on, particularly?
Well, the difference I think it makes with me and some other people, I didn't find out about jazz through books or through somebody. I lived it. I was around it all the time. I mean, I came up in the time of the Beatles and James Brown. That was my people. But at the same time, I was always hearing Nat Cole, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Count Basie. All of this was going on in my house all the time. And then we'd have people, I mean, like my father's friends were people like Dinah Washington and all them. So it's like, I was always around so many people that did this. And I was one of those, my parents used to you know how they say, get the kids out of here, grown folks are talking. It wasn't like that at my house. I mean, the grown folks would be talking and I would be taking it all in, you know, when they sitting there drinking beer and playing cards and
Right.
talking about the old days. So it was like a movie in my mind when you're a kid and you're hearing all these guys talk about the old days. So I knew about the Reno Club and the Eblon and all these places and the jam session that took place with Lester Young, Ben Webster, and Coleman Hawkins.
Yeah.
I knew about that way before I read about it. So with me, like I said, the whole thing, the difference is I was around people that lived and breathed it. So it wasn't about just learning the mathematics. Matter of fact, that's the last part of it for me. The biggest thing that I learned from all those guys, my father's friends that were tap dancers and the musicians, is that if you pick up your horn or play your instrument, you have to say something. And that was their big thing. I mean, I could go down to the foundation when I was 17, 18 and hit some high notes and do a lot of fast stuff. And after I finished playing, somebody would look at me like, what was that? You know, I mean, and so I learned at an early age that all that spectacular and acrobats and showing off and me, look, you know, that had little to do, at least the way I conceptualize music, because of them, it has little to do with jazz to me. But that's what mentorship.
So you were learning and you didn't know you were learning.
Right. I had no idea.
Which is the best way to learn.
It was,
Maybe.
yeah. It's like
right?
learning how to talk or walk. I was around it. So my vocabulary and my everything around me was shaped by what I was around. And that's still the way I play. I think that my DNA is from Orville Minor and Hot Lips Page. And you know, that's just the way I think, because I was around it.
Well, you know, we are not ageist here at KC Jazz Alive, but you just heard the perspective from one generation. Jackie, you have a perspective from a different generation. Grab the mic there, if you would. Hey, tell me about your coming on the scene, mentorship, how much of it you had, how much of a difference it made in your life.
Okay. I came on the scene about 5 years ago is when I moved here from Austin, and I came to Kansas City because to me, Kansas City, I mean, it might as well be New York to me. This is the place to play jazz in my mind. And I worked a long time to be invited here. I was touring out of Austin for about 10 years, but I kept coming through KC and wandering into the jazz clubs. And I would just see what I thought were the best musicians I'd ever heard. I grew up in Washington, D.C. So it's not that I didn't have access to jazz growing up, because I did. We got to go to Blues Alley. My dad was a big jazz fan. That was probably my first exposure to the genre, is spending time with my dad, him taking me to those like free Kennedy Center concerts, which are still going on. But anyway, so I kind of started to try to be here more often. I could just feel the energy and the music when I tore through. And this city was like a magnet for me. And I knew the history. And I still think this is one of the most important places to play jazz in the world. So when I got an invite from the guy who owns Green Lady, John Scott, I came. And I worked with him for a couple of years. And that's sort of where my mentorship started. I was studying with Ken Lovern, and I studied with Roger Wilder. And then that appointment kind of ended, and I did some other things. I got a graduate degree at UMKC where I studied with Bobby. I was lucky enough to get Bobby's last year there. And Roger kind of showed me other teachers to work with, and I kept going along those lines. Frankly, one of the reasons that I'm drawn to jazz is because you can continue to study it throughout your lifetime. For me, I hope that mentorship never ends in my life. I'd like to continue studying for the rest of my life. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how welcoming did you find the jazz community here when you arrived from Austin and then from DC? How was that for you? How were you embraced when you first arrived?
Well, one thing is I had a couple gigs. I think breaking into scenes is really hard. in general, especially jazz scenes, because it's such a residency oriented genre, right? Like all the players want to scoop up the local residencies. So I had 3 starting out, which is not a bad number to start out with. So I feel like I was welcomed. I think any scene is kind of insular and it's kind of hard to break into, but in general, the community here has received me really positively. And I feel like this has become very much my home and that other people feel that I belong here.
You know, Lonnie, we talked last time about the Kansas City scene and this notion of mentorship, one generation passing it on to the next. And Greg Carroll has pointed out any number of times that Kansas City seems to do really well in that area, this idea of the older bringing the younger along. Talk to me about that. Do you agree with that? Is that your sense as you look at it?
I agree with that completely. Yeah, I think that, like I said, using myself as an example, going down to the foundation and being able to sit in with people when I was 15 to 16 years old. And then after I was old enough to go into nightclubs and stuff, I would sit in with the Scamps and with Coots Die and of course Betty and Milt.
Yeah.
They were always welcoming to my brother and I. And so it's like when I do things for younger people and I get these accolades, I don't really feel like I deserve them because those guys paid it forward. I remember when my brother and I first put the McFadden brothers together, I had a top 40 band and we would play original songs. And I've been traveling all over in Japan and stuff like that. When we broke up and put the McFadden brothers together, Jay McShann came by the house one time and he was talking with my dad. He heard Ronald and I in the basement practicing. Mind you, we only had 1 or 2 gigs. Back then it was a club called Yard Boys. You remember at the old airport, Yard Boys. Jay was playing a special event there, a big, $100 plate kind of thing back then. And this is back in the late 80s. Yeah. He was playing there and he just, when we came upstairs from the basement, he was in the dining room talking to my dad. He said, why don't you guys come over and sit in? He wanted to expose us to his audience. Not only did he do that, but when we were walking off the stage, he handed both of us a $50 bill. And I never forgot that because it was his way of letting us know this has value for one thing. And to this day, I have never in my life asked a musician to do anything for me for free. If somebody calls me and asks me to play, well, Lonnie, it's a fundraiser and so on. And even if I'm passionate about it, I'll say, I tell you what, I'm on board, but you got to pay the band. That's just something that I have never done, and I will never ask a musician. Now that I'm in what some people call a headliner position, I will never ask a musician to play for free. If I'm going to do it, that's my choice. But I say all this, even though I know I'm deviating from the original questions, because there's so many
It's a
people.
story of my life, Lonnie, deviating from the original question. Happens all the time. Host a radio show sometime. Yeah.
Okay, I swear I'm going somewhere with this, right?
Let's hope.
No, what? You shouldn't have invited me. I told you, you know what's going to happen. But oh, this is hilarious. Okay, but there's so many people that say they support the performing arts and very, very well-to-do philanthropists around here. But I've had some of these same people invite me to real nice parties that they're throwing and ask me to get some of the best musicians that I know to play for exposure. Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I again, they paid it forward. Jay McShann, all of them. So if I do anything to help the next generation, I owe it to you. So
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Emily, I'm just curious. I usually ask this toward the end, but I'll ask it earlier on here. I'm just wondering, as you listen to this and this ongoing conversation we're having with this group about the importance of mentorship, what role you begin to see KC Jazz Alive playing in that? What do you think is needed? What do you think might be helpful? How important do you think it all is?
Well, I think if the art form is going to survive, obviously, we have to depend on our mentors to pass that to the
Right.
next generation. And I'm really grateful to Jackie for recognizing what a resource Kansas City is
Yeah,
in that regard and
absolutely.
saying, I want to seek that out. I want to go there. I want to be part of that scene. I think KC Jazz Alive has always been about raising the tide that lifts all jazz boats, right? That's our
Greg
little
says it
cut
every
line.
time.
So what that's about is during Spotlight Charlie Parker, we don't just spotlight Charlie Parker's music, but we spotlight jazz musicians across the city that performed during that time period to raise the exposure, if you will, of jazz in Kansas City. I mean, this is where Charlie Parker came from. It's where he made his name. It's where he's our favorite son in the jazz world. So we want to continue that. We want to make sure people understand that the scene still exists. It's still thriving. It's still alive.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of our role. And then as far as mentorship goes, I mean, tomorrow night's event with Kansas City area youth jazz, that event kind of spotlights that younger generation. And you can support all of that. There's a website somewhere with a link on it, so you should go there and take advantage of it. So that, again, is a project we want to support, and we want to raise the exposure in the community to jazz.
Jackie is relatively new to Kansas City. How do you see this organization? What could this organization do to be helpful to somebody like you?
So how could KC Jazz Alive be?
Yeah,
helpful?
how could it be helpful to a musician who's coming on the scene, either moving from out of state or coming up organically from inside of Kansas City?
I think probably networking capabilities would be really good. I was able to sort of infiltrate the scene, for lack of a better word,
How
quickly.
did you do that?
I'm very persistent. I will, if I don't hear back from an email, I will just keep emailing, and I'm polite about it, but I will be answered. So
Don't
that's
ghost
kinda-
Jackie, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't
It's not going to pay off for you. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I actually want to talk about something that Lonnie said,
Please.
because one thing about mentoring and understanding music is not just about playing. It's about learning how to run a business and understanding how to live as a musician. Like I know you introduced me as a singer and composer, but I think most people in the scene mostly know me as a player.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of pride in that. And one thing that I learned when I first came here, I tried to hire Danny Embry for a gig, and I didn't know there was a rate. There is a rate in Kansas City. You cannot go below the rate or you will be blackballed. You cannot get gigs if you go below that rate. That provides us with the ability to make a living and live here in the city. That's very important to a healthy atmosphere for musicians and for art to develop. I hired Danny, and he said, that's not enough. And I said, there's no more in the budget. He said, if I play at that rate, I will lose money. And I took it really seriously, and I paid him what he asked for. He wasn't unfair. It was the rate. I learned later on. A couple months later, I double booked. I almost never double book, but I double booked somebody. They showed up, two bass players. One had to go home. I said, I am so sorry. And I was genuinely sorry. I was like almost in tears. I was really upset. And I said, I don't know how to make it right. And he was like, there's one way to make it right. You pay me my rate. And the demands that we put on each other are also the demands that we need to be putting on businesses and folks that hire us to play. And I've learned to be proud of my rate and to be proud of what I make as a musician here. And that's not demanding, that's just asking to be treated fairly. So another reason that I enjoy living in a city is learning how to cultivate my business. And, here I can own a home. I couldn't do that in Austin. I can make a fair wage here. I can work 5-7 nights a week here. And I think the best way that that organization could help us is to foster more venues and more opportunities to play and more mentoring to understand how to run your business, not just how to play your instrument, though there's plenty of that, but the jazz education, it's really clear where to get that, to understand how to then translate that into your life, how to run a life like that. I think that would be great.
We've talked a lot about that here, haven't we? That need to sort of teach the business. We've offered it. Yeah.
The key is make sure that artists communicate to each other about those sessions and they actually come to them, because then they can be ambassadors and models for future sessions.
How much solidarity is there among the musicians that, as you're saying, there's a rate and we're going to stick to the rate?
A lot.
I gather that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah.
Lonnie knows the rate. We all have a rate right now. I mean, you definitely cannot hire anyone for less than $100 in this town, but it's moving up to more like 125 or 150.
Which is still not enough.
Not enough.
No, but coming from other scenes, like more expensive cities with lower rates, it's definitely a better looking landscape for me.
So the whole, I know it's not my panel.
Go.
But the whole notion would sort of artists working in a collective to insist that those rates are going, very much like we see the SAG community do now, will help on a national scale. If we continue to take gigs in larger cities that cost more money for less money, then that threshold is always low. So we have to force ourselves as a community to elevate that threshold and not accept anything less. And to Lonnie's point, not accept this for exposure crap. That this is all about my livelihood. You would never ask your doctor to operate on you or your dentist to give you dental surgery and then say, this will be good exposure for I'll market your services. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, after you pay the $3,000 that it costs for you to open up your mouth. Right.
Right.
So I think it's very important that we as a collective also work to move that threshold up, because there's no reason why an artist should not demand a fair wage that is above market or a market wage. And that market wage should and could be higher from my perspective.
But what else needs to be passed on, Jackie, beyond just the rate, the money? Are there other aspects to this business that needs to be talked about more often among the musicians?
Yeah, I mean, I think I also think there's a larger conversation to be had. There's an entire ecosystem of venues and artists and audience members that all need to be in the same boat. And so I think it's not just artist to artist, it's an entire community, an entire city having this conversation, because the venues can't pay us a better rate if people are not supporting jazz and coming to the venues, right? So it's not just
Venues
like,
need to be part of this conversation.
yeah, as does the community. And I think you start with the kids, like right now, Kansas City Jazz Orchestra has a program called KCJO Jazz Works, and they send us into the schools. And our main objective there is just to connect with the kids. And when I got lucky enough to work with them this summer, when I'm talking to these kids, they don't know that jazz is a famous thing in Kansas City. I start out saying, do you know who the Chiefs are? And they go wild, you know? And then I say, do you know that Charlie Parker is basically like Patrick Mahomes of jazz? And they don't know, you know, and I bring up the bronze statue.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
But if we don't teach the kids to have pride in jazz, that then turn into adults that patronize the venues, it's all of us together. If the musicians just simply demand a larger rate, what will happen is there won't be as many jobs for musicians. There's supply and demand in these situations. We have to grow the entire scene in order to get a larger wage and be treated fairly.
Well, Lonnie,
That's what we're talking about. That working collectively together. You have to shift that paradigm, right? But if Jackie's doing a great job and Lonnie's doing a great job of shifting it in their world, then only those two pegs go up. But then other people are taking gigs for $50 an hour. That shift isn't going up as a paradigm. So those other owners don't get that message, right? that's where you have a unique opportunity as an artist of influence, right? To be helpful in passing that paradigm shift opportunity around. That makes sense.
Which is a great point. Lonnie, is there a role for you to play in all this as a veteran of the scene?
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to always be the young guy in the room. I don't know
No
what
more.
happened. I
Hate to
swear.
break it to you, Lonnie. Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Anyway. As a veteran, what I'd like to, I have to admit, the way I approach it, I don't expect anybody to support me. I've never supported jazz. I love it. And I've always seen me as a product. I don't support Walmart. I go to get toothpaste there because I can find the product I want at the price I want it. And I've always approached being a performer that way. I try to bring something to the table that gives the consumer a reason to get up and not sit at home on their couch and look at Netflix. I think we're at a time now where we have to realize that entertainment, it's not like back in my dad's day. They other than the parlor piano, they had to go to a club to be entertained, to congregate. Now, I mean, we got so many reasons to not leave the house. So my approach has always been, I mean, when I had Lonnie in the band, when McFadden Brothers, and now what I'm doing, I have always tried to offer something that you can't get on Netflix. And live music just does that for real, but you have to show up. You know, it's like when I get young musicians with me, the biggest thing I tell them, because sometimes they're intimidated, they don't want to mess up. I said, no, play. If you step on my toes, I'll pull you back. But and this started years ago. I mean, I heard Matt Cain when he was straight out of he was still in college. He was like 19 years old. When I first hired Mark Lowry, he was 19. Same thing with Andrew. I just hired a kid, Jordan Font. He's just turned 21 2 weeks after I hired him. You know, so wow. It's like when I get these guys, the biggest thing I tell them is show up. And I think that's so important when younger guys, Chalice or any of these guys ask me something, the biggest thing I can tell them is, as an artist, show up, because what you'll find is that you can only become the second best Charlie Parker at best, but you will always be the very best Houston Smith or Chalice O'Neal. Or So if you show up with your way of presenting it, not my way or his way, with your way of presenting it, your way of playing, you got to learn what Miles and Diz and them did. But when you get on the bandstand, it's like Charlie. Well, I'm gonna paraphrase this because you all know what he said. He said, "Forget all that stuff and play." And that's what I want people to do. And if I got Tyree, I got Jordan, I got Andrew. And one thing that, and even way back to, like I said, Matt Cain, I think everybody will tell you, no, Lonnie wants you to play. And that's what I think my part is when people come to hear me. You're not gonna get a watered down version of something that you could have got from AI or something like that. AI can't do what you're gonna get in the room with me, because it's like this. It's off the cuff conversation. It happens right now, however we're feeling. And so my job to wrap up, I talk forever, it seems like, but my job, I think, is to approach it from the standpoint of, if I do my best, I put in the thousands of hours to put out a decent product. If I continue to do that, I think that eventually people will hear about it. It's like the old Steve Martin thing. I'm still trying to reach it. But his advice years ago, I heard him say this: you got to be so good they can't ignore you. And I think if us as artists bring that attitude to the table, our audience will find us, and that's what I think.
You know, yeah, that's very well said. You know, one thing about mentorship that strikes me as so key is inherent in the process is the idea of listening. Listening's hard. You know, again, someone who hosts a radio show every day, some days the words come in here and go out there and they're not stopping in the middle, you know, and listening's hard. One question I have, maybe I'll come back to you, Lonnie, and I've heard folks, and we talked about this last time in my industry, who complain, you know, the young folks don't come to you and ask questions. They're not listening. They're not engaged with what the veteran newspaper guys have been through. What's your sense? Is the next generation, are they open and willing to listen to what you got to say?
It's
Are they
amazing.
coming to you?
Yes, I'll get a phone call or email either from people that I see them online, but I didn't even know they care about what I you know, like you said, I'm the veteran now. So I think that my opinion has been that, well, they're not interested in what this old guy has to say, but I couldn't be more wrong. I get phone calls from almost all of the younger people that are in jazz. And they'll ask me, Lonnie, how to do this or how to do that, or like the business thing. How do you get a gig? How do you work from being this at this number to get to this number? How do you? So I think that the young people are very open, and I've never went to anybody and say, hey, come here, let me show you. I've never done that.
You wait for them to come to you.
Yes. And what I find is that they are open to it. They're very open to learning. And I think when Jackie first moved here, she might ask me a couple of questions about things. I mean, I think that if people see you as somebody that's maybe doing something that they want to do, it's like I was never shy about it. I learned how to play basically from asking. I never had any private lessons. I mean, I dropped out of high school at 16. I did it the hard way. But the way I did learn is from asking questions to people that could play. They could play, and I was blown away. And I would ask them. And I remember Eddie Saunders came and got me at my house when he lived down the street from me. And one day I had just put the kids to sleep. He brought me down to his house and he made me learn Cherokee. I loved it. And so I think that, again, these guys paid it forward with me. So I'm very open to anybody that has any questions for me. And they are, yes, they are asking. The younger people I have people from like 19 to 59. They ask me things, and I'm more than willing, because that's, like they said, that's what has to happen so the music continues to live.
Jackie, I get the sense that you're someone who's asking questions based on what Lonnie just said. Have you been asking questions to those who've been around a little bit longer than you have?
Yeah. I mean, really, my goal is forever to be a student of the music. So that's all I do is ask questions.
How open are folks to talking to you when you approach them?
I mean, I think if you have respect and humility, that you can get a really long way with questions, especially if you are respecting the music and the person that you're asking the questions to. Lonnie's right. I did come to him when I first moved here. He caught me practicing at the Green Lady. I used to practice there all the time. And I've played for him a couple times. Actually, when he was talking about the musicians being nervous for his gigs, I knew what he was talking about. But I think the main thing is to understand who you're talking to, where you are. I mean, you're in Kansas City, and having respect for what came before you. If you do that, I think anyone is going to answer your questions, especially in this scene. People want to share that information. They're really proud of their jazz and their scene, and they want to share that with you.
Were you able to get that kind of training at college or university? I mean, it's a very different kind of education we're talking about here, isn't it?
Yeah, and it depends which one you're talking about. Yes, because I think the approach is really the same. I don't really think it matters how you get your education. I definitely went the college route. But I went to school for science. I just couldn't keep out of the practice room. And I kept ditching class and playing piano. So eventually I just kind of caved into that process. And the person that I studied with there was Gabriel Espinosa, who's he's really big in the Iowa music scene. And now that he's retired, he's going to New York and doing all sorts of things over there. And it was the same approach as me talking to Lonnie. It was, hey, I don't understand this piece at this bar. When I'm on a bandstand and I play that bar, what volume should I be at? When I take a solo, how many choruses should I play? Like things like that. It's the same questions I would ask Lonnie. It's just that I had a format and a platform to do it. If you can find your format and platform, do it.
Emily, when's the last time KC Jazz Alive did one of these workshops that Greg was talking about a little while ago?
Probably pre-COVID, I think at this point.
Yeah.
It's been a bit.
So it's been a little while. Yeah, but I know we talked about that when Bobby Watson and Deborah Brown were here the last time. We
Right.
talked about we need more opportunities to put your mentors and your mentees together, in the same room and just give people an opportunity to be like, hey, ask these basic questions. These are things I've always wondered about. Maybe you can help me with that. Just to put that out there. So we
You
should
wonder
probably
how
get back to that, right?
Or just one of the recent topics that we'll probably visit in our August, September meeting will be to look at this notion of what was the phrase John used, performance,
Listening session.
no, not the listening, the other, the mentoring. I like it. Is it a workshop? Yeah, it's like, I forget I have my notes in the car, I'll go get them, but it's something to do with, it's like our artists mentoring artists for musicians, assisting musicians. That was what we titled it, of course, same kind of thing. Sessions where artists are going to be helping each other on investing, how to save money, how to book gigs, how to create an audience, how to do grants, workshops, things like that. Not just about building your musical skills, but this is about
Right.
building your
Absolutely.
extracurricular that helps enhance your music skills. Because if you have a great house, you can put nice furniture, right? And then that nice furniture gets even better because you built a solid foundation at which you're building that house. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So in other words, the more astute you are at some of these extracurricular areas can allow for your musicianship to flourish more because you'll have more opportunities. The more we play, to get better.
What should a program like that look like? Informal, formal, Q&A with people up here? Yeah, what should that look like? Jack, what do you think, Jackie? Emily, any thoughts? What would be the most helpful?
I think we're really talking about two different things. A lot of the stories that Lonnie and I have just told, they all involved music, right? Like he heard me practicing at Green Lady. Jay McShann heard him and his brother playing in the basement. We're talking about people sitting in. People like Lonnie and I communicate best with our instruments. Actually, we were sitting at that table earlier before this, and we were wondering how we're going to make words before like 5 p.m. Because this is, I'm up at 8 or 9, but I'm not like, I don't know how to talk to you before a certain hour. We just communicate better. Well, thanks. It is my first language. So anyway, our stories all involve the music itself. So I think you need both, right? Those are great things to do to teach musicians about business principles and to understand how to run that side of your life, because without that, the music is impossible. But when we're talking about fostering the growth of musicians and fostering the music, all of our stories involved playing live. I'm not sure there's enough like jam sessions in town. I'm not sure there's enough opportunities for sit-ins other than I play the foundation. But this is an oral tradition when it comes down to it. Jazz is an oral tradition. That's really what it takes to pass this knowledge down, is the ability to be in the same room with our instruments and to say, what did you just play? I heard that was cool. That's my thought.
Has that changed, Lonnie, this idea of sit-ins and, that the opportunities that were around 20 years ago, are they not around as much today?
I think it's more. I've traveled to a lot of cities and I don't know of very many. I mean, I've told people that friends of mine, if you come to Kansas City, I can take you somewhere every night of the week where you can sit in. Every night. And I don't know of any, when I was with Wayne Newton, we used to travel all over and Ronald and I would go look for jam sessions in all the cities we went to. We really have a very unique thing happening here. Things like KC Jazz Alive, like the Jazz Ambassador magazine, like a forum like this to talk to each other about what can we do to promote the music, to promote musicians making money and stuff like that. I think, yeah, somebody, and I don't know what's going to be said online, and they can argue with me, but I'm not going to argue back. Bottom line is, this is a great place. It's a great place for musicians to be. You can make a living here, and you have to be assertive like any other city. But I think that if you really want to play, I don't think there's a better, if it is a better place, tell me where it is, because I haven't been there. And I mean that. I've been to New Orleans, I've been to New York, I've been to Chicago, I've been to a lot of places. I have yet to find a music community. That's one of the things Jackie said to me early on when she moved here. The community here is really pretty good. And I have people, that's the reason people are moving here from Houston and Austin and New York and St. Louis and stuff, and get here and stay here because they can make a living here. And so I think that the music mentorship part, I think you got to be assertive, because again, I've heard people have had people to call me in, Lonnie, how can I get a gig? After I tell them different steps, they want to cut out step A, B, C, D. And they want to what they want is for me to talk to the club owner and say, will you hire someone? Yeah. It ain't like that. If you go out here and do the jam sessions, go to the other people's gigs, and you got to do the networking. You have to get out here. You got to get your hands dirty, so to speak. Yeah. I think if you do that, you'll find that you can make a decent living here as a musician. And that cannot be said about every city that I've been to, at least. Even in Vegas anymore. That used to be the gold mine, not now. Not now, yeah. So I'm really excited about what's going on. I'm excited about the young talent here. I'm excited about the new people that are moving here. I'm excited about what we've got, and all the things you all are talking about. If I can be a part in helping with any of it, throw my name in there. I want to do it. We got so many talented young people.
Yeah.
You got you on speed dial. You know that, right?
I want to give you all a chance to ask a question, but Macy, have you heard anything from Dr. Bassi?
Yes.
It's not like David to be silent too long. So, yeah. We're waiting to hear from him here. What questions do we have here? Yeah, yes, sir.
Let me say that I've been a jazz lover all my life, not a musician. But I think we all, looking around, most folks are of that age. We've known world-class musicians, we had to pass the hat to get married. World-class musicians who had to work a 9 to 5 at Macy's somewhere, in order to sustain yourself, because this town refuses to pay. It refuses to have the consciousness that would allow us to do that. I think jazz is Kansas City's greatest heritage. Yet you go to New Orleans, man, you can't take the dust off the woodwork in Bridgeport, because that's the goose that lays the golden egg. We've literally, we basically destroyed most of our historic clubs, and while it's better now than it has been, we still got a long way to go in terms of getting the community behind this heritage that we have and making something happen. I know guys who won't come to this town now because the club owner says, well, you didn't make the draw, so we can't afford to pay you. Right, what's that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a need for something to be done here.
Reactions?
Well, I'll say that I agree with what you said about the heritage being erased. That used to be a big pet peeve of mine. A lot of people that are not old as me don't even realize that we didn't have a jazz district until Cleaver finally talked to people that are in charge of the image that this city has, to realize how many tourist dollars were missing, because Kansas City, way before the Chiefs became Super Bowl people, and even now, they want to call this the city of fountains. I don't know anybody anywhere in the world that calls Kansas City the city of fountains. However, even when I was a teenager going to Japan, at 19 years old, I'm in Japan, Kyoto, Japan. They asked me where I'm from. I said, Kansas City. The first thing this guy said before he said, how do you do? Chalepaka. This was in 76, the bicentennial year.
Yep.
So I could not agree with you more that but again, I'm on the other side of that statement, even though I agree with you, is that we're doing so much more now than we ever did. So I'm so happy about the direction, because back then we didn't have a KC Jazz Alive. And back then, before the times I'm talking about, when the jazz district had been erased, that was before there was a Mayor Cleaver. That was before there was a Blue Room and Jazz Museum and all the things that are moving forward. Right now, I get into conversations with people that are talking about, and this should happen to help it to be like this gentleman is talking. I've been in conversations with people that are talking about the jazz district going from the Crossroads area all the way to like 18th and Woodland.
Mhm.
And that's when we're getting on point with businesses. But again, like he said, people have to buy into this. But I gotta admit, I'm such a cheerleader for this city because there's so much good going on. Yes, it's taking time. It's taking time. But I'm old enough to know how far we've came, just like Greg, when he mentioned earlier about we've been doing this for 10 years, the Charlie Parker celebration. Then he looked at me and said, and I know we should have been doing, right. We should have been, I've been doing it ever since I was like 21 years old on Charlie Parker's birthday. But I cannot be anything but excited that now KC Jazz Alive and different organizations are celebrating Charlie Parker. Yeah, I could be bitter about the past, I guess, but I don't see it that way. I'm so happy for the things that are happening now. And yes, we do have work to do. It's a continuous work, but a lot of it is starting. I just say, let's keep the truck going. Yeah.
So in some cases, the elephant's still sleeping, and in some cases, I think his ass has been slapped and woke up quite a bit. In Kansas City, there is this little thing called racing. Right? And so when you talk about economic prosperity for certain classes of folk, there's a direct link to that and the perception of race inequities.
Skunk on the table.
What's that?
And they put the skunk on the table.
Well, they put the skunk on the table and I say, wait, slap the horse in the ass and wake up the hill. Because that's part of it. I battled that all the time at the museum. My first meeting at the Jazz Museum was with Officer Ernie from the East Patrol. Because all I heard from people was, I don't come down there too. I hated that phrase. Down there, like, where are we in hell or something? I don't come down here because I don't feel safe. I'll come down there because there's not enough lighting, so we fix lighting. I'll come down there because there ain't enough parking. We did a parking study. There's plenty of parking. I'll be down there because we're not safe. So I called up Muriel. Said, can you tell me, is it possible for KCPD to put more, there is a story here, to put more officers out so that people can feel comfortable? He said, no. I said, why? He said, because you don't have any crime. We can't dispatch those resources where there's no crime. And I said, well, what the hell, people don't feel safe there? He said, because they're racist. They don't feel comfortable around black people. And I said, okay, so then I started talking with board. Remember this, Mike? We started talking about the people who need to tell people that should not look like me. I can't be the ambassador telling white folks that black folk are safe. I need white folks telling white folks that black people are safe. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I preach? So my point is that this brother made an excellent statement. People should not have to be scrapping and scraping to play this great music that people so supposedly respect and yet even exploit in this city. And some folk who look a little different than this brother and me are making more money. And some aren't. So those are some inequities that need to be woke up. Oh, I'm not saying woke, I'm saying awaken. Hello? Right? And I say that with all passion and all love in my heart. I am so not a racist. I'm not a reverse racist, you know, like black people against white people, right? I'm all about anti-racism. Right? And so when he talks about jazz, you can't divorce that conversation of race because it was built on it. It was built on it. And so when folks try to segregate that in the conversation, it also proves to me that they are still a racist or practicing that notion. Now, I don't mean to preach, and I hope I'm not offending anybody. But my point is that these conversations need to continue to happen. And since 2016, and y'all know what happened in our country in 2016, the SHI, you know what, got word.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So jazz have always had to dance around that journey, right? Of artists who are damn talented, like John, Jackie, and Lonnie up here. But yet Jackie may get a different kind of respect than Lonnie does just because of their color of their skin in this city. And that's so unfortunate. So what can we all do together collectively? And I'm not going to put it on the shoulders of Jazz Alive alone. Because this is the congregation thing. Amen?
And it doesn't belong.
And it doesn't belong on our, this is a congregation thing. This is a paradigm shift. That, to Jackie's excellent point, there's two ways we get mentored. What I call OJT, on-the-job training. That's so important. You know, the kind of stuff you learn from Everett Van when you playing vibes and organ together, right? The kind of stuff you learn from Lonnie up on the stage. That's incredible. Listen. But then there's also that other off the stage stuff that's so important that we can help each other out with so that some of this doesn't have to happen. Now, I was going to pose that to a question, and the question was, am I off base?
You asking me?
I'm asking you up there. White, black, green, red, yellow.
I think it's uncomfortable for people to be candid in a public forum. But I think most people that are sitting in this room are allies and feel that same way. But no one is saying it out loud where it can be addressed.
And I'm not, forgive me, guys, if you detect a little bit of angry black men, because that ain't that at all. All that was passionate talk.
Yeah.
And passionate talk from a black man means a louder voice, which sometimes gets interpreted as angry black. Greg is as happy as he can be, and I'm smiling.
Well, again, for me to answer this, I want to start by saying, and this may be hard to believe, but things are way better.
Oh, they are.
They are. I mean, I'm old enough to, okay, let's go ahead and deal with it. when I was younger, and when I say younger, I started playing professionally at 16 years old. From the time I was 16 until in my mid-30s, I could not get booked on the Country Club Plaza. We had all black band, and only time I could get booked when they finally opened the Phoenix back then was on a Tuesday if I was in somebody else's band, in some white guy's band. I was the black guy in the white guy's band. And now, having said that, I mean, yeah, I can tell you about all the bad things, and I've had a bunch of them. I had a guy pull a pistol on me when I went to get paid, you know, all these things that happened because I do look a little different than Jackie, you know, and so I can go into that, but I can also say that ever since I decided to play music full time this last time that you all know I tried to be an adult back in the early 2000s, and I tried to sell cars at Aristocrat. No, you know, it wasn't for me. So when I realized that I wasn't put here to be an adult and I started trying to book myself, what I found is that the color that people are really worried about now, yeah, it's younger people that own the clubs now. It's a new way of thinking that's out here now. I mean, you know, you even look at the way that the direction that the Kansas City Star newspaper is going. It's like the newer generation that is my age and young, I'll say 50 years old and younger, not even, maybe I'm still too old, but the younger people, they don't see it the way. So the old guard, yes, I came up along the time when people like J.C. Nichols showed the world how to redline. Yeah. So I know about the racist history that we've got here. I've lived it, but I also know the way it is now. And if you present yourself with class, integrity, and you show yourself to be able to be monetarily successful to these people. Yeah, part of the conversation is that if you don't draw, that's a reality. If I make Crest toothpaste and it don't sell in Walmart, they're not going to carry it anymore. And the same thing with me. If I don't draw, my job is to bring people to these establishments that will buy that alcohol, that will buy these dinners. If people decide because I'm not there, they don't want to come in here, the club owner shouldn't hire me. He opened that business to make money. And in a lot of places here in Kansas City, until recently, there was no cover charge. So if you realize that as a musician, if you, let's say you charge $200, you're a solo artist, you've added $200 to his expenses before he opens the door. Now he knows his way of making money is food and beverage. But since most places in Kansas City don't have a cover charge, the only way that he can equate your value is that you brought in enough people that instead of him making $2,000 tonight, he at least made $2,200. That's just basic. This is business 101. So if you being there and he's used to getting $2,000, you being there and you cost him $200, now he's only getting $1,000, and he's got to take your $200. It's to me, but again, I approach it different. I don't want nobody to support me. I want to give you something that you really want to have. Mm-hmm. And if I do that, I think both of us win.
But Maestro Lonnie, you just gave a master class that most performing artists don't get. They're behind the horn
and they're studying, and then when they get out and get their degree, they expect, here I am, world, I'm arrived. In that masterclass that you just gave, that's something I think Jazz Alive is really trying to focus on, making sure that gets to the community. And that's one of the reasons that both of you guys are up here, Jackie and yourself and Emily, you're a resource to them. You're saying some of them are taking advantage of your resource. And I follow Jackie. I've been following you for a few years. And I've watched what she does as a business person, you know, and she is actually modeling entrepreneurialism, just like you are. But I don't know how far it's, Steve, I don't know how far it's getting to the we work a lot of next generation artists, and part of our program, yes, to make an album and to expose them to a professional industry experience, and that includes a lot of what you're saying. Greg's in it with us. We got Dave Cunningham, we got Thornton, and then we got everybody on the scene. All of you guys on the scene have agreed to be clinicians, so we bring you there and you give a master class like what you're talking about. And I can say a cross section of the young top artists who audition for this program, they are not getting what you're saying. They get it from our program, or they get it when they interact with you. How can we do a better job of that as a community, or is it possible?
Jackie, you grab the mic. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd like to actually go back to a couple points. There's been a lot said.
Okay.
When it comes to what we're talking about in terms of diversity in our community of jazz, and as it pertains to being a Black musician in the Kansas City jazz scene, I understand that it's gotten a lot better, but I really only have been here for 5 years. So I have a different perspective of what it is. And, you know, when I got here, I definitely was told there are clubs, there's a race line in this town. There are clubs that hire accordingly. And that's like really completely unacceptable. I think the only way to remedy that situation is to create more job opportunities overall. I don't think that you're going to really correct the behavior of clubs. If they're making a profit, there's no social pressure that could change the way that they practice business. The color of green really is the strongest force in the business. So that's my thought there. But to say that it's not here would be a grave mistake. It is. And I feel that there are more job opportunities for white musicians than Black musicians in this town currently.
I've said no to jobs in Kansas City performing to people who have racist practices than I have to others because of that. And that means that I didn't make that money, but I made a conscious decision to say no. So the artists also have a way to provide an economic impact, whether it be like the great Martin Luther King says, that economic impact can hit both pockets.
If we had a union where a group of people could say no to a club and create a change, I would agree, but I'm not sure that I wish that worked. And if I thought it did, I might say no to things myself once in a while. I play to make a living.
Yeah, no, I understand. And that becomes the conundrum, right?
Right.
Because it's easy for a guy like Greg Carroll has a nice suit, a nice house, and a beautiful wife to say, hey, we all need to raise our standards. And there are so many people aren't getting phone gigs, and so they know that those calls they're getting are going to make the $500 they need to pay for life that month, right? Versus others who can wait, or who can do the SAG actors kind of holdout and get more money. I get that. That's a conundrum. But there's, in my mind, what my point was, maybe I didn't make it clear, is that as a jazz collective, that community needs to come together to find standardization. That piece has not occurred. I tried to get it going at the museum. I got my ass kicked because some guy said, I'm going to take any gig, whatever gig. And I wasn't saying don't take a gig. Let's just work on raising the standards. Right? So I think that piece needs to be thought about. Yeah. Sorry.
Is David coming through?
He sent some text.
Or she had her hand up too. I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
I'm an amateur singer, but I just want to say that I go to a lot of jam sessions. Now they're all in Missouri, supposed to be in Kansas City, Missouri. They're all integrated. And there's been such an influence of younger musicians from the music programs, not only at the Jazz Academy and the Jazz Museum, but UMKC and Kansas City, Kansas Community College is a great program.
They do.
I mean, there's an influx of young, mostly white musicians that are really getting into jazz. So change is coming. It should take time.
The only other thing I wanted to circle back to is I just wanted to put out another perspective about what I think my job is. Lonnie says his job is somewhat to draw. I don't feel that way myself. If I'm going to play, I think I have 6 gigs this week. If I play 6 nights a week, how am I going to draw every single night? Are the same people going to come out 6 nights a week for me? Now, if I have a CD release, yeah, I can probably sell out my CD release. I can probably sell out like 1 or 2 things a year, but I'm an entertainer. And what I'm doing is providing that service to a business. So it's really their job and the community's job to provide the venue for me to play. If they would like entertainment and music to enhance the experience at their venue, their hotel, their restaurant, I'm here. That's what I do. There are different ways to approach this. There are different business models.
Isn't that duality that's compatible with the profession? What you're saying and what Lonnie's saying and what I do as a concert artist, I don't play clubs anymore. You know, I'll play a half a dozen times a year, but that's what I want to do. And that's where I'm at my point. It's the valuation of art. Like every venue, just like they have this table, they should include a budget to have jazz in Kansas City. And we can raise that to be a commodity. If we work through the CBA or somebody like that, and we send people to places that have music, they'll find a way to pay that $200 a month. They'll find it because those people will be directed to them from these conventions that come here. Hey, this place has music, this place has music, this place has music. And the more of those places that have music in the metro, that's more opportunities, living wage opportunities, I would say, for musicians. The more gigs you get, you can have some kind of you can sustain yourself. And I think what we're getting to here is infrastructure. At the bottom of it, you're talking from the artist perspective, you're talking how to run your business, and you're basing your business model on the infrastructure that our scene has. And you're actually telling us some deficiencies and some great things about it from my mind. Is that what you're hearing too?
Yeah, absolutely.
One more thing, even though I wanted to weigh in on those 2 things and share my honest truth that I know it.
Yeah.
This is the best place to play jazz music that I've ever found. And I toured the entire country. I've toured a little bit internationally. This town has the most opportunities for me and the best way for me to create a life. The fact that I can play jazz 6 nights a week, other towns, I've lived in other towns. I had to compromise what genres I'd play. I mean, I will play other ones sometimes, but 90% of my gigs, I get to play Kansas City jazz. That is amazing. We have an amazing thing to foster and protect and build. So we're starting from a really strong vantage point.
Yeah.
Sorry if this is from left field, but a lot of, in fact, all of the perspective tonight or today has been geared towards the artist. And what can the artist receive? What does the artist owe, et cetera, et cetera. Let's take a look at it from the consumer, the people that you serve, the people that are paying the rate, paying the draw, et cetera, et cetera. Where does your responsibility as a musician enter into that? And I'm not trying to be antagonistic.
No, that's
It's a fair part of the equation.
Absolutely.
Since that consumer is the one that ultimately makes everything possible for the artist.
Great question. I'd love to hear Emily's perspective on that. As a presenter too.
You mean as somebody who's presented over 300 artists? Yeah. Please, and I used to make a speech before each of our shows about silencing cell phones, but anyway. Well, that's a really good question. I turned to Lonnie at the end of that statement and I said, the consumer makes it possible, but we have no clubs with cover charges. So really, the clubs make it possible. I think that's what we've heard from these folks. And the clubs, as Chris said, need to build that into their budget. If I'm going to have a restaurant and jazz club, I need to be prepared to pay musicians to play jazz, regardless of how many people come in and buy a drink or buy dinner or whatever. I mean, I personally know a couple folks in this town that are great jazz fans, but they only attend free shows. And if they have to go to a restaurant or club, they don't buy anything. So how is that supporting your musicians as a consumer? You know, I'm just like, way to support jazz, dude. So they're not true jazz aficionados. That's a great point. I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And I'm hoping those people are making contributions to UMKC jazz programs and other things, and they feel that they've given in another way. So maybe that's what's happening, and I just don't see that. But I feel like the presenters, the jazz clubs, the people that are booking these artists are the ones that are really footing the bill for what they do. And of course, Lonnie does that for other artists in town himself by producing his own shows.
Right.
But we need our audiences, or why are we doing it? Right. So it's really it's a balancing act. It's also difficult to be a presenter when you have tickets to sell, wanting to price those tickets so that all your ticket revenue will pay for these artists to come in. And inevitably, that's never the case, or all the tickets in town would be $150 and up, depending on who you're booking. So we depend on our ticket buyers, we depend on our donors, we depend on, you know, corporate sponsorships and all of those things in tandem in a really delicate balance to make sure that we can continue to produce and present performing artists in this town. So consumers are a big part of it. If you're not there, there's no reason to do it, but we all have to work together to support the art form.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on what you just said. Lonnie mentioned a minute ago, he established the rate. That's an activity of union. That's an activity of a collective. We as consumers then can decide where we choose to do business. I don't do business in Walmart because of the policy that people, how they treat their customers. That's my choice. See, but collectively, we can determine, you know, how this thing plays out by the folks who love jazz promoting those clubs that don't discriminate, that don't, that pay a fair rate, as you said, that honor a union collective.
Right.
So it's something to think about.
Mike?
Yeah, I would just throw out the idea to all of us that the power of advocacy is impressive. It makes an impact.
Yeah.
All of us are advocates for this music. We're advocates for me personally. I love watching musicians do what musicians do. I've been watching it. I'm almost 77 years old. I've watched it forever. I'm still amazed by what you guys do when you do it. And getting the pleasure of seeing it live is just awesome to me. It's always awesome to me. So when I'm out and about and I'm talking to, and everybody in this group belongs to civic organizations in this city, all of us belong to multiple things. We have the opportunity to speak to how we value this music. We have the opportunity to say why we love jazz, because a lot of people say, I don't understand jazz, I don't get it, I don't know enough about music to go listen. Yes, you do. Let me tell you why I value it. And as an organization guy, a student of that, and having a master's and all that sort of stuff, the characteristics of jazz, intentional listening, collaboration, creativity, improvisation are the elements of every healthy and dynamic organization that exists, including family. capacity that we have to collaborate, improvise, bring creativity to what we do. That's how organizations make stuff happen. And we have the voice, we have the capacity, we have the ability to share that with people that we drag in clubs. If you don't volunteer to go, they go. And when the issue of a cover charge comes up, say, oh, yes, you pay a cover charge. You get the show. Preach, you know, preach. So anyway, I would just go out.
That's really well said. Really well said.
Buy a ticket, $5 ticket, $10 ticket. It's not a charge.
That's the
It's an admission.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Now, the last comment is, thank you to you guys that prepare.
Yeah.
You add to the.
I think that's a great note to end on. We've gone a little long here. Let's give Jackie and Lonnie and Emily a round of applause for coming in here today to speak with us today. Really good. Really good.